Hello and welcome back to New Paradigm Healing. This series focuses on Ayahuasca Assisted Therapy, and our intention is to educate, inform, and support the conscious and responsible use of ayahuasca in a Western context. My name is Jessica Gooden.
And my name is Nina Itzel.
And you're listening to Episode 5, where we'll be discussing the importance of preparation, which includes intentionality and choosing a place and a guide for the ceremony. And we're going to be framing this around what ayahuasca assisted therapy is. In the last episode, we mentioned that Nina has a new book coming out. So we're going to be going more into depth about the topics that Nina discusses in her book. If you want to know more about ayahuasca assisted therapy, sign up for our mailing list to be the first to know about the new book launch, new episodes, and our upcoming trainings at avatarhealingarts.com. Help us spread our message by following us and sharing our episodes with your friends. Join our tribe at facebook.com/group/ayahuasca assisted therapy. So, Nina, I really wanted to ask you about this topic because of your book. I consider you an expert in this topic because you've created a framework based on your own research and your own background, which is in psychology, and through your work with your clients and with the Mother Ayahuasca. I don't know if anyone else does this, and you can probably speak more about that. What is ayahuasca assisted therapy?
That's such a good question. Thank you, Jessica. It's really a topic that is so dear to my heart, and I'm so passionate about this and excited about this book coming out and being able to share this message with more people who are interested to learn more about this topic and to expand their consciousness. I don't know if this phrase exists. I know that what is used is psychedelic assisted therapy. It's more kind of in the mainstream now, which refers to like psychedelic substances used as catalysts in a therapeutic process. So I kind of take this expression and use it with the ayahuasca and created ayahuasca assisted therapy, which is focusing on using this specific plant as a catalyst in a focused therapeutic process with a guide who is leading that process. So the biggest difference is what is it and what it isn't is that is not just an ayahuasca ceremony. So many people who hear about the ayahuasca or interested in the ayahuasca, the first thing when you research it on the internet or when you start talking about it is the ceremony itself. Oh my God, I went to the ceremony and what happened in the ceremony. And that is where most of the focus goes in the West. And most people look at this as an event that happens in their life. What I'm talking about is a healing journey, is a healing process with clear intention that takes about a year to complete for most people if they are open and willing to do all the work, of course. And this journey has 3 parts, basically. First is the preparation. When you're preparing, like same way you go on holiday, right? There is preparation you have to do. And then the ceremony, what I consider is an initiation, is a rite of passage. And we create a space for that, or the individual who is doing this work. And then the last part is the integration process, which is basically about the embodiment of what you learned about yourself and the world through this journey, and how you're gonna embody that and act upon that in your life in every moment. So the key here is to understand that just because you intellectually understand something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you act upon that and you embody that in your everyday life. And real fundamental change, if we want to create this embodiment, is necessary to create change. Otherwise, it's just going to stay a concept or a memory. You know, the whole journey will be an intellectual journey and not bringing all the fruits that it could have. What I would say is that ayahuasca assisted therapy is a journey that contains preparation, a rite of passage or an initiation and an integration part, and it takes at least a year to go through that. And there is people who go for an ayahuasca ceremony and look at it as an event, and there is people training to be a shaman and going for a training for that. So there's many ways to engage with this tradition, this plant, but my focus especially is this framework, is this journey where I believe the real healing and the real change happens. And I look at the ceremony as a crucial part, obviously, of this journey, and the plant and the Mother Ayahuasca as the catalyst and an ally for the individual who is undertaking this journey.
What an awesome explanation, Nina. So what I'm hearing you say is that, and I know we've mentioned this in our previous episodes, that the ceremony is not our focus. What we're focusing on is not a shamanic training, and this is not preparing to serve the medicine. This is a framework, or I believe I've heard you use the word map before, to help the ayahuasca assisted therapist guide the initiate or the person going through this healing journey along what happens during the year-long process of integrating and embodying the experience. Would you say that that's correct?
Yeah, definitely. And the individual itself, so it helps the individual navigate. I like to use this word map because of the metaphor. If you are, again, going on a holiday to a place where you've never been before, you have a map or a GPS or a guide who knows the place, right? So it's the same concept that we are exploring an uncharted territory. So it's good to have a map and a guide. Otherwise, it's going to be just more difficult, to get around, and you have to learn from your suffering, kind of. Which is also okay. It's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, for sure. I think I just want to mention that after my first few ayahuasca ceremonies, I didn't have the framework. I didn't have the understanding because I hadn't read your book yet, which I feel super lucky that I got to read it before it comes out. And it really, really helped me to understand what the heck I was going through. Because the first few times, it was like you said, I felt like I was going on uncharted territory. I left the jungle, this beautiful space, being held by a community, by my loving family. And then I came back into the West, and everyone was like, what's wrong with you? What's going on with you? You seem unstable, all of these things. And then as I was reading through the different passages in your books, since this was probably, I don't know, maybe the 6th or 7th time that I've gone through this process, it made so much sense. There was so much clarity for me, and I no longer felt lost in my suffering. Like, oh my God, I've fallen down into this hole and I can't get up. I know, okay, this is the next part of the step. Turn right here. There's gonna be a stop sign here. Oh, and here's a beautiful architectural detail here. All of these different things that if I did not have a guide or even a map, I would not have known. And I think I would have been lost in my suffering for quite a bit longer. And it gave me a sense of not just hope, but faith. This is a proven framework, and other people have gone through this. And therefore, one, I'm not alone. And also, two, it's not going to be here forever. I'm going to move on to the next stage, which is really amazing. So that brings me to my next question of why do we need ayahuasca assisted therapy in the West? And I want to include all around the globe, but I went into it a little bit, but I'd love to hear your perspective on why it's so necessary and important.
Thank you so much for your perspective and sharing your feedback about your personal experience. And I just want to connect back to what you said, because that's exactly the reason, and that the experience I went through when I stepped on this path and started with this journey, that I went to Peru and I went into the environment where the medicine and the tradition is coming from. And then I kind of came back to the West, and I could see the huge difference of the two places and the two way of thinking. And just, I wasn't aware of that perspective to such a deep level before. And then in the West, I felt completely lost. I didn't feel that I can relate. I didn't feel that I have any help or support people who understand what I'm going through and what I'm dealing with, and who give me any kind of guidance or support. I didn't even know where to go or what to look for really in that intensity. And obviously divine guidance and all angels in human forms come to my life to help me in the difficult moments. But it was really at the beginning for me is like a trial and error kind of thing, and okay, now you listen to your intuition and follow that. It was a difficult journey, and the most difficult part, as you said, is I think feeling lost, and that puts you in a state of fear. So there's fear and anxiety because you don't understand what's happening to you, you don't know how to navigate, you don't know where to go for help or for support, and that is the blockage in the process that you are in that state. And I think it's extremely important that we create a framework around this to support people in this journey. And as you said, it makes it so much easier if you just have a little bit of understanding of what's going on. It makes it easier. You can relax, you can more surrender, you can more flow with the energy, with the transformation, and help yourself instead of resisting, and going against what is really happening. I think that one of the most important things to understand people who live in the West and they never traveled or spent more time in other cultures is that the way of thinking and the way we understand who we are and the way we look at the world is completely different than the people who live in the Amazonas jungle, for example, in Peru, in Brazil, and the way they experience their life and their being and how they look at the world is completely different from the West. The main difference being is the West is very material, so it interprets the world through the five senses, and you are your physical body, and what is real is what you can perceive with your five senses, and that is kind of the basis of the understanding. While in a shamanic context, in a tribal native culture, like for example in Peru with the Shipibos where I was trained, they have a completely different worldview. They look at the world and they understand that you are more than the physical expression, than your physical body, that there is more than you can perceive with the five senses, and they are connected to those layers of reality. So they understand that everything is connected and animated by spirit, by energy, and that the physical body and the physical expression is only one aspect of our being, and therefore the non-physical realities for them is something that is part of their world, is part of their understanding. They can communicate with these realities, with these spirits, the plants, the elements, the Mother Earth, and they have a very different sense of being and connectedness and who I am and what is this about than what we have in the West. So in that traditional context where they use the medicine, first of all, there is a tradition for that was passed down for thousands of years. So that is kind of encoded in their culture, and people are trained, and this tradition is passed down from the healers and the shamans and the wisdom keepers. So they have this tradition, this understanding, this cultural element is part of their culture, is part of their world. When they work with this medicine after the event itself, the ceremony itself, they stay in their community, they stay in their culture, in their context, they stay where the shaman is, where the plant master is, where the grandmothers are, where the family is, and they can relate to this experience. Everybody can relate because they understand. So, and if they need any support or more guidance, they are in the context where this is available for them. So obviously when I was in Peru and learning from the Shipibos, they don't talk about the integration process because from their perspective, it's something natural that happens in the context where they are and where the medicine is coming from. And this is something new what we do, that we take the medicine out of the context and bring it into completely different context without full understanding and try to use it there. So I think this is what inspired me so much to do this work and to look at this deeper and see how can we create a Western context, like using this wisdom, using this knowledge, using the tradition, using all that wisdom that was accumulated for thousands of years, and listening to the elders and the wisdom keepers and the shamans and the guardians of this tradition, and also acknowledging and incorporating and merging it with the West, because that's where a lot of people is coming from who want to work with this medicine and their understanding and the tools that are available in the West, and create something that will serve us, in the West, to use this very, very powerful medicine. So that's kind of my point on it. I'm really curious, Jessica, because you are from the United States, and then you spent so much time in Peru, and in that original context, that how was your experience when you were in Peru, and then how was your experience when you went back to the United States? Because I think that's also a very typical story that people have who decide to travel.
Thank you for sharing all that, and thank you for asking. I want to include some of my reflections on what you said as I answer. So I mentioned it before, but when I went to Peru, it was exactly like what you were saying. They just have a different way of living that is very much connected with their environment. They're connected with their family. It's not unusual to have your sister come and stay with you with her 5 kids and her partner or her boyfriend or her husband for a month and just hang out, come and do ceremonies with her brother as a shaman, and then just be with the family. And all they're doing is doing the laundry in the river and taking care of the plants and brewing and praying over the medicine, and also doing their sewing, which is also part of their spiritual practice. In the West, it's so divided. They call it the division of church and state, or the separation of our material elements from our spiritual elements. And in the Shipibo tradition, and I'm sure in all of the other native cultures, they don't divide the spiritual from the physical. They are merged. And when they are doing their crafts and doing their occupational things, it is also a spiritual practice. So these women sew their prayers into these beautiful tapestries, into clothing, the beautiful designs that they create based on what the plants share with them. That's just one element. And then they are connecting with their food. They don't have a microwave. They are cooking over a fire. They might have propane tank that they bring in from the town, but they're cooking over a fire. They're praying over their food. They're being with their family. They're in nature. They don't have a car. They don't have a computer. They don't have any of these distractions that we have in the West. And they're also these distractions from another way. You could look at them as tools. But when you come back out of that experience of being so connected to nature and community, even that in and of itself, without having the psychedelic ayahuasca healing experience, even that can be jarring when you reintegrate and notice how disconnected people are from their environment. So then you add the psychedelic experience on top of that, where you're creating these new neurological pathways, where you're opening up your experience, where you're opening up your senses, where you're connecting to the spiritual aspect of yourself, of something greater than you, to the love. Then it compounds already the element of having to reintegrate into society. And I like what you had used as a holiday. It's like, I hear people say, oh, I need a vacation from my vacation. It's like, yeah, you need an integration from your integration of your integration. And it's funny because I think it's something that's very much neglected. And we even have phrases of like, oh, just get over it, or you're being too sensitive, or all of those things, which I heard of like, what's wrong with you? Like almost making me feel shamed for my experience, like something something was wrong with me, that they couldn't meet me where I was in my experience, which is, like you said, it's super important to have this map, this guide, this framework, so that you can focus on the task at hand. Right now, we are in the death process. Okay, I know we're in the death process. That means that all of these past belief systems are going to fall away, which means that I might have certain people in my life that are going to fall away. I might have certain habits, certain eating patterns that are going to fall away. And so that kind of allows you to relax, because you have not only a map that you can rely on if you want to do this as a solo journey, but then you have another person as well that you can talk to about all the difficult experiences, because people don't understand. They really don't. And where I live, it is very conservative. Most people have not even heard of ayahuasca. People think psychedelics are like, oh, psychedelics. They're very afraid of them in and of themselves. And I know that I'm not alone in this. I live in a city, and yet this is the norm in a city in the States. So very important, very crucial to have this ayahuasca framework. And I'd like to hear your reflection.
Thank you. No, thank you so much to sharing and to share your experience. It's always good to hear, from all these different perspectives. And I want to emphasize that we are not advocating here against Western society or pro-shamanic living or anything like that. Really, the point is to merge it together. As you said, for example, the Shipibos very much connected spiritually and with the higher realms and aspects. There is a huge disconnection from spirit in the West. Even people who might be religious, they might not feel connected with, the spiritual aspect. So that's definitely a tendency. But at the same time, often in shamanic settings, they have an imbalance of the expression of the material energy, and there is extreme poverty, on that level. So I think that for me, what is important is to come towards balance and harmony, and balance is about the golden middle. It's about, taking, the wisdom and the teaching and everything, and taking all the good things from the West. And there are a lot of good things in the West and a lot of good things in shaman culture, and they just a little more extreme with different energies. And my intention with this framework is really to merge this and to bring this together. And it's not to create a division or to say that let's go back to how it was 3,000 years ago because that's the way to go. But no, let's look, how the tradition, the thousands of years old tradition, what it says, and then let's put that together with what we have and what we know, and see what is the best way that it's going to serve us now of where we are. So yeah, I just want to add that.
That was beautifully summarized, and I'm really glad that you added that, because I think, at least for me, my whole intention right now is to live a modern sacred life. And what does that look like? How do you blend these two aspects? And ayahuasca assisted therapy is really a beautiful tool for doing that. So thank you. We're coming to the end of our time for today, and I think that's good because it'll give us a chance to integrate everything we just learned. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll be continuing our discussion of preparation, including setting an intention, writing your prayer, and choosing a place and a guide for the ceremony. If you haven't already, sign up for our mailing list to stay up to date about our projects and trainings at avatarhealingnerds.com and modernsacredlife.com. And you can help us grow our tribe by sharing our episodes on your platforms and by joining our Facebook group called Ayahuasca Assisted Therapy. And remember, you are the healer and love is the medicine. Love to you all.
So much love.